Both were surprised when Sienna emerged in less than 10 minutes, but to Sienna, it felt like much more time had passed. Could ancient magic have changed the speed of time? When Sienna pulled out the box of cigarettes, the Duke and Michael were taken aback. "Sienna, do you remember how old you are?" the Duke asked. It was Jaros who spoke up, saying he liked the name's aesthetic but not the design. His Aros wasn't pleased, his expression darkening. "How dare this kid criticize my aesthetics?" Sienna quickly scolded him, but the entire family just laughed and chatted happily. The small fire in the room, however, was so angry that smoke rose from it. The teacher had just announced the end of class when Sienna quickly turned to Michael. He was overwhelmed by the girl's hard-working spirit. She studied all day, and Michael couldn't understand why learning was so interesting to her. "Of course it's interesting," Sienna replied. "The more you learn, the more you know." Through her studies, Sienna had come to realize that in her previous life, she hadn't just been robbed of her magic, but also of joy and opportunities. Since creating her own field, she had immersed herself in a brilliant world, watching it grow stronger and stronger. Nurturing a world that belonged only to her brought her immense happiness. The world sparkled with starlight, and every day was full of vitality. Today, Sienna returned to the orphanage. As soon as she got off the bus, she rushed to hug teacher Lisa. Seeing her, Lisa couldn't help but comment, "You've changed. You really have the temperament of a lady now." Along with Sienna, Michael had also arrived. Lisa eagerly asked, "How have you been?" "I'm living very well," Sienna replied. "Everyone is very kind to me, well, at least before Lorena appeared." Sienna marveled at the transformation of the orphanage. No more drafty windows, and everything is much cleaner than before. Since Lisa took charge, the living environment had improved significantly, but Michael found it hard to believe that such small improvements could make a difference. The cracked glass doors, degraded walls, and rotten stairs that creaked underfoot were still there. The tea was brewed with old items and the rice was black and hard. Michael thought to himself, "This place used to be worse than I imagined. Servants wouldn't even eat here." Lisa remembered the previous dean's frugality. He was so strict with expenses that even onion skins were cooked into soup for the children to drink. The spices were so bad the taste was unbearable. Now the children can finally eat well and don't have to suffer like before. Sometimes I even make cookies for them to eat. Sienna's eyes lit up. "I've always wanted to eat those." Lisa smiled. Only the director and guests used to eat them. Michael was taken aback. Cookies? They were so difficult to get before, and now they're a treat for the kids. The delicious dish was something the children craved, and seeing Sienna's satisfied smile, Michael felt increasingly uncomfortable. He couldn't help but wonder how Sienna had spent her days in the past. Lisa felt guilty because she hadn't taken good care of Sienna before. She was excited that now, with Sienna back, she could ensure the girl would never have to suffer like she did before. "Now that I'm the director here, I'll make sure you're very happy too, Sienna." Sienna was taken aback when Lisa reminded her, "But you're now the daughter of the Nature estate." Michael's reaction puzzled Sienna. He hadn't expected such a response. Lisa quickly apologized, realizing her mistake. "I said it wrong. Sienna naturally has to live in the Duke's palace." Michael also began to understand the situation better. He noticed how Sienna had visited places where common folk lived, allowing her to understand the struggles of ordinary people. But only today did he realize how hard life had been for the poor. Sienna, who had grown up there, must have endured much worse. Lisa explained that recently many nobles had donated to the orphanage after Sienna's public introduction. There had been a surge in the adoption of orphans, though many were driven by impure motives. Still, some people genuinely saw the orphanage's plight and made voluntary donations. Before long, it was time to say goodbye. Sienna bid farewell to Lisa with some reluctance. Michael had never seen her so at ease at the palace. She had always kept her distance from everyone, and there were times he wondered if an orphan, more outstanding than the rest, would eventually return to the orphanage. Did Sienna miss that life so much? On the way back to the palace, Sienna remained cheerful about their brief visit, but Michael was growing more concerned. "Sienna," he said, "don't go to the orphanage again in the future." Sienna was confused by Michael's insistence. After all, he had been the one to insist on accompanying her, even interrupting her conversation with teacher Lisa. Now they wouldn't let her go to the orphanage. Sienna had visited with the Duke's consent, and it was something she had been allowed to do from the very first day she arrived at the nature residence. Michael, however, was growing impatient. "Did you plan to return to the orphanage all along?" he asked. "That's right," Sienna replied. "After all, that's where we used to live." The two didn't understand each other's feelings, and a disagreement quickly began to brew in the carriage. Michael couldn't understand why Sienna felt the need to return to the orphanage. Does she hate the Nur family? Does she hate us that much? "Even so, you're still the daughter of the Natter family," he said. Sienna turned away, no longer looking at him. Michael knew she wouldn't listen to him, and there was nothing more he could say. A silence hung between them, and a few days passed. Meanwhile, Lisa was working in the garden when she noticed Sienna approaching. She was a little worried and asked, "Is it okay for you to come here so often?" Sienna smiled. "My visits don't bother you, do they?" "How could they?" Lisa laughed. "The more you come, the more donations the nobles make. Thanks to the children, of course." Sienna chuckled at Lisa's humorous expression. When Lisa asked if Michael had come with her, Sienna paused. Since their argument, the two hadn't seen each other again. "If this were my previous life, I would have been afraid he'd get angry and stop coming to the orphanage," Sienna thought. But now, she didn't care. After all, when Lorena showed up, or when Michael misunderstood the relationship between her and Elle, this fragile friendship would have ended anyway. "He's very busy," Sienna explained to Lisa. "He couldn't come today." Just then, someone called out to Lisa. "The child in room number 6 escaped to the storage room." "Is this the new naughty one?" Lisa asked, and then turned to Sienna. "Please wait in my office for a moment." Sienna walked toward the office and noticed the door was slightly open. As she stepped closer, she saw some fabric exposed under the closet door. Immediately she understood. The child must be hiding in the closet. Sienna couldn't help but smile. "If it were me, I'd hide it more carefully, making sure there were no traces." Sienna had used the storage room as a clever distraction. As the cabinet door creaked open, a boy with black hair and blue eyes stared at her. "Who are you?" he asked warily. "Who else could it be?" Sienna replied with a smile. "I'm one of the seniors who lived here before you." The boy, though cautious, found himself intrigued by Sienna's confidence and approach. She reached out to him gently. "Are you planning to stay here forever?" Meanwhile, Lisa was thoroughly searching the storage room, but when she couldn't find anyone, she grew exhausted. She returned to her room and was surprised to find the boy sleeping soundly on Sienna's lap. Lisa sighed, feeling a bit helpless. This child was transferred from another orphanage and was always very resistant to this place, refusing to open up, but now he's opened his heart to you. Sienna reassured Lisa, "Don't worry. I've already talked to him. He'll listen and be obedient." As the time came to leave, the boy clung to Sienna, begging her not to go. No matter how much Lisa tried to encourage him to let go, the boy wouldn't budge. Sienna leaned in and whispered something into his ear. The boy pulled away slightly, looking at her with uncertainty. "You didn't lie to me, did you? So we really promise?" Sienna smiled. "Of course, but you have to keep your word too." As Sienna was about to leave, Lisa asked curiously, "What did you say to him? He's never been so obedient." "I just told him I would come back," Sienna replied. Lisa was still puzzled. "So, what did you promise him?" Before Sienna could respond, the boy appeared behind Lisa. Bowing his head and apologizing, he confessed to all the mischief he had caused, promising that if he was obedient, Sienna would return to play with him again. Returning to the Nature mansion, Sienna looked out the window, lost in thought. She had been there for a month now, and according to the timeline of her previous life, it had taken more than 4 months for Lorena to appear. Though many things had changed, Sienna still couldn't shake her worry. She feared that all the progress she had made so far would be undone by Lorena's magic. Sienna had hoped things would get better, but after her quarrel with Michael, she realized something. The love she received from others felt fleeting and meaningless. Sienna realized she needed real achievements and tangible changes to confront Lorena, who was about to appear. She thought back to the Emperor's illness in her previous life. The Emperor had suddenly fallen seriously ill and died, but it was Lorena who had extended his life for another year. That was why she was given the title of the Healing Angel. Even after the Emperor's passing, Lorena stood by the Crown Prince during the funeral, maintaining her position as a public servant. Sienna thought to herself, if only I had been the one to cure the Emperor's illness. Izaros, sensing her thoughts, advised, "You should try anyway. Healing and purification come from the same origin. It's not impossible to succeed." Since that incident, Lorena had gained the support of the people and was favored by the royal family. But suddenly, Sienna realized something felt off. The Emperor was originally healthy, so why did he suddenly fall seriously ill? And Lorena just happens to have the ability to heal. Was it all just a coincidence? A disturbing thought crossed her mind. Maybe from the very beginning, this was all a conspiracy. Izaros, deep in thought, pondered aloud. If that's the case, we need to confirm whether the Emperor was truly sick. If this is Lorena's plot, she might have staged everything to control you, because she needs a trophy to compete with the rightful heir. At the same time, the Duke received news of a recent development. A healing mage, whose magic had been lost, had appeared in the Empire. The mage is Lady Lorena from Earl Mean's palace. The news of Lady Lorena's transformation into a healing magician spread quickly, capturing the attention of many. Many people began comparing Lady Lorena to Sienna. The Count's palace even released the news again, and Sienna wondered if it was because they were paying attention to her, the rightful heir. How could that be, she thought. Lorena is a member of the nobility. Why would she pay attention to an orphan like me? Upon hearing this, Izaros, with a competitive spirit, urged Sienna to quickly practice healing magic. "You absolutely cannot lose to that spoiled child," he said. However, Sienna knew that no one in this world had ever mastered two types of magic at the same time for long. She didn't want to waste any time and decided that focusing on her purification magic was a better use of her efforts. She could improve her level as a healing magician, but only if she strengthened her existing skills. Sienna knew that Lorena's healing ability could only be used on one person at a time. Furthermore, Lorena only used her magic when absolutely necessary, which is why she was always surrounded by nobles hoping she could cure their incurable diseases. However, after extending the Emperor's lifespan, Lorena regretted having told them she could help. She could no longer use her healing magic after that, leaving many disappointed. One day, as Lorena left after curing someone, disappointed nobles stopped Sienna. They demanded that she quickly inform Lorena to come and treat them. Back then, Sienna had loved her sister dearly, so she flatly refused their unreasonable requests. Her refusal, however, angered the nobles. "An orphan like you," one of them sneered. "What qualifications do you have to dare refuse me? After being by Lady Lorena's side for so long, you should know your place." They even went so far as to hit Sienna. If only I had the ability to heal like Lorena, Sienna thought, then those people wouldn't dare treat me this way. But Sienna didn't want fame or fortune. She wasn't about to put herself in trouble over that. Currently, being the master of Izaros is already a great accomplishment, she thought. Izaros, sensing her thoughts, was incredibly touched by her dedication. "Learning healing magic is a long road," he remarked. "But who said you are my master?" Despite this, Sienna's mind returned to the Emperor's illness. If the Emperor's sickness is part of a conspiracy, it's best to deal with it before it happens. But how should I meet the Emperor, she wondered, feeling uncertain and worried. Izaros saw that Sienna was worried for no reason, and couldn't help but think, why is this smart kid being so foolish? Then he chuckled. Though foolishness can be cute sometimes. Before Sienna could think of a way to meet the Emperor, the Duke informed her of something important. "Actually, the Emperor has wanted to see you for a long time," he said. "The previous 2 times the invitations were turned down by me. This time, there's really no reason to refuse." It was only then that Sienna realized, "I am already the owner of the name. Being summoned by the Emperor was a normal thing. I've been worrying for no reason, trying to find a way to meet the Emperor. What a fool I've been." Excited at the news, she was eager to go, but the Duke frowned and said, "Don't feel reluctant. If you don't want to go, you don't have to." Sienna, however, didn't want to miss this opportunity. "As a subject, it is my honor to pay homage to His Majesty," she said earnestly. The Duke's expression became even more serious. Sienna assumed he was worried she might act inappropriately in front of the Emperor. She quickly promised, "I will study the proper etiquette diligently and absolutely avoid involving the Natcha family." But the Duke's melancholy deepened. "Doesn't this child understand what I'm trying to say?" he thought. Sienna, oblivious to the Duke's inner turmoil, remained excited. His Zaros, noticing her enthusiasm, couldn't help but laugh. The Duke had wanted to stop her but was unsuccessful. At the Imperial Palace, in the garden, the Emperor was enjoying the view when Duke Urus came to deliver the letter. The Emperor waved his hand dismissively, saying, "If you have something to say it quickly, then leave." Duke Urus handed the letter over, but the Emperor didn't bother to open it. He immediately threw it aside. Duke Urus, familiar with the Emperor's reaction, left without protest. Once alone, the Emperor picked up the letter again. After reading it, his excitement was hard to contain. "Finally, I've met that child." Meanwhile, it was time for class. Sienna arrived at the classroom door and saw Michael. Since their argument, they hadn't seen each other, but Sienna didn't want to skip school just to avoid him. "Why don't you come in? What are you doing out there?" Michael asked as he stood at the door of the classroom. Sienna didn't show any emotion, but her eyes kept flicking towards Sienna's shoes. Sienna looked down and realized she was wearing the red shoes Michael had given her. Were these the servant's choice? She thought. But now that we're angry with each other, wearing his shoes feels a bit strange. It seemed she really liked these shoes, though. She quickly explained, "I just brought them today to match my outfit." Michael didn't respond, simply walking into the classroom with her. His silence seemed to imply that he hoped Sienna understood what was really good for her. During class, Sienna felt increasingly uncomfortable under Michael's gaze. It made her feel uneasy, and she wondered if he had received any news. The teacher began a lecture on evil spirits. "What is an evil spirit?" the teacher asked. "It's the evil energy that arises from the human heart, an evil energy born from within us. Count Jester and Isabel, along with their mother, are typical examples." The teacher explained that humans inherently carry evil intentions, making it hard to detect the symptoms of evil energy invasion before it breaks out. Sienna, however, had already seen the evil spirit in Jester and Isabel's eyes long before the teacher's lesson. When she had mentioned it to his Zaros, he had explained that unlike humans, Sienna could sense evil spirits. Since becoming the master, she had gained this ability, which not only helped her sense evil spirits in others, but also enhanced her skills as a healing mage. His Zaros had advised her to keep this ability a secret, because its power was so great that it could easily make others jealous. Today, the teacher introduced the 4 levels of magical beasts. Demonic beasts are the lowest level, the teacher explained. They've lost their reason and only know how to kill and plunder. The next level, the common level, includes demonic beasts like Count Jester, beasts that can recognize each other and cooperate. The teacher went on to explain the rare and epic levels. Demonic beasts that use evil magic belong to the 2nd, rare level, and magical beasts that surpass human strength belong to the highest, epic level. Sienna and Michael couldn't help but feel concerned. The teacher assigned homework: investigate typical events for each demon level. Michael asked Sienna what her plans were for the day. Sienna had no intention of hiding it from him. "Frankly speaking, I will go to the orphanage today," she replied. Michael's reaction surprised her. Be careful on the road. Come back and we'll do the homework together. His calm response was beyond Siena's expectations. He wasn't angry anymore. Siena headed to the orphanage with 2 bodyguards the Duke had arranged for her. When she arrived, teacher Lisa was busy taking care of a group of children. As soon as the children saw Siena, they excitedly rushed to her, calling her teacher of room 6. The scene quickly became chaotic, and Lisa had to calm them down and tell them to take a bath. The bodyguards, understanding the situation, quietly stepped back, giving them space. Siena worried that Lisa might think she was overdoing it, but Lisa was thrilled. This scene was proof of the Duke's high regard for Siena. Thanks to her frequent visits, the amount of donations from the nobility had increased significantly. Even though many of these donations came with ulterior motives, they still greatly improved the conditions at the orphanage. Both the teachers and the children were grateful to Siena for her support. Since Lisa started calling her teacher of room 6, the title had become popular among the children. Even the boy had started calling her that. Siena was gentle with the children and often played with them, so it was no surprise that she was beloved by them. Just then the boy appeared, startling Lisa. It turned out that a teacher had come to ask Lisa for help, so she left for a moment. While she was gone, the boy stayed with Siena. He picked up the book Siena had lent him and began discussing its contents. Siena was surprised by how much the boy knew. Though he was young, he had read many books, and his understanding was far beyond what she had expected. Many of the boy's characteristics were unlike those of the other children at the orphanage. "Will you listen obediently to Miss Lisa?" Siena asked, a little curious about his response. Siena tried very hard to listen, thinking to herself that if Miss Lisa hadn't mentioned things like brushing teeth, she would be more obedient. But once Lisa left, Siena felt uneasy. The forest was eerily quiet. There was no wind, no birds singing. The carriage she had been waiting for also seemed to have disappeared. Siena surmised that they had been caught in someone's magic circle, but she couldn't sense any killing intent. The other person probably didn't want to harm them. Suddenly there were footsteps. The bodyguards immediately became alert and moved to protect Siena, but just as quickly the 2 bodyguards vanished without a trace. At that moment a door appeared in front of Siena. Hisar's voice reassured her, telling her not to worry, there would be no danger. Siena felt a strong, friendly energy welcoming her, and she entered the door. What greeted her was a lush garden full of fresh green plants. As she walked further in, she saw an old man. "You're on time, kid," he said. Siena's eyes widened as she realized it was the Emperor. "Don't be afraid," he continued with a warm smile. "I'm just an old man passing by, and I heard that a beautiful, kind child became the owner of the name. I wanted to meet you personally." Before Siena could respond, footsteps sounded behind her. It was the Duke. He looked somewhat helpless and complained, "Emperor, you shouldn't joke like this. Didn't you hide this child from me? Is this why you led her here?" Siena's realization hit her. The Emperor was the Duke's uncle. Hisar, always alert, reminded Siena to be cautious of the Emperor. Siena focused and looked more closely, and that's when she saw it. A shadow seemed to cling to the Emperor, and Siena's eyes widened in shock. His heart was completely corrupted by evil spirits. The evil energy inside him was similar to what she had seen in Isabel and Count Jester, even more intense. Just that amount of evil energy alone could turn someone into a monster. If it broke out, the Emperor would certainly die. But if that happened, it wouldn't end there. If such a large amount of evil energy erupted in a place where magical powers gathered, it would create a far worse situation. Many Ra-level magical beasts might appear, which could directly lead to war, putting everyone in danger. This type of evil energy cannot naturally enter a human body. It must be caused by someone. Siena immediately thought of Lorena. What kind of tricks had she used to harm the Emperor to this extent? Since her resurrection, Siena had watched the Duke and the others change, secretly hoping that Lorena would no longer be the same as before. But now it was clear that Lorena hadn't changed at all. Not only had she deceived herself and sacrificed the Emperor's heart, but she had also deceived the entire empire. Siena couldn't hide her anger. This time she had to stop Lorena's plot. The emperor's heart had been corrupted by evil spirits, and this was all part of Lorena's evil scheme. Sienna surmised that the emperor must have realized it too. After all, the royal family was the strongest healing family in the world, but this entire garden was under the emperor's domain, and Sienna intended to use the power of purification to counter the evil spirits as much as possible. Only a healing magician could purify them, but relying solely on Lorena's healing abilities would only extend the emperor's life by 1 more year. Sienna came up with an idea. She would cooperate with Hisar to treat the emperor's illness. That way, she wouldn't be caught up in a direct confrontation with Lorena. The emperor invited Sienna to enjoy cake with him. The royal family's cakes were indeed much more delicate than those of the duke's palace. In her previous life, Sienna had only seen them as part of the royal family's gifts to Lorena. Lorena would divide those royal rewards among the surrounding ladies to display the royal favor toward her. Sienna took a piece of cake and put it in her mouth, but the taste didn't impress her. Perhaps it was the royal title that truly attracted people. The emperor, charmed by her lovely appearance, became quite fond of her. He couldn't understand why such a delightful child had been taken away by the duke. The emperor invited Sienna to take a walk in the garden, and she was thrilled. It was a great opportunity to chat with him. However, she couldn't help but wonder if it was all right to leave the duke alone like that. The duke reassured her, "Don't worry. You're the Empire's top healing mage. We'll teach you many things." As the two strolled down a small path, the emperor asked if Sienna minded being suddenly disturbed by an old man. "I hope you understand, after all. Healing magicians always have many followers. Since they can purify evil spirits, everyone around them feels at ease." Now Sienna understood why people treated her so kindly. "You and your majesty are both healing magicians," she replied. The emperor's loving gaze turned probing. "When did I reveal your identity?" he asked. Sienna stiffened, realizing that she had never met the emperor in this life. How could she have called him your majesty? But she quickly put the pieces together. Someone who could have such a close conversation with the duke could only be the emperor. Her quick thinking cleared the emperor's doubts. By this time, they had ventured deep into the forest, but what lay ahead was not a lush landscape. Instead, it was a desolate land, overgrown with weeds. This garden was the emperor's domain, the world he had created. The emperor gazed at the weeds, his expression solemn. "This place became like this. Is it because people are sick?" "Maybe," Sienna replied. "It's because there's something black on the human heart." Upon hearing this, the emperor was stunned. "Child, can you see it?" His cry of surprise attracted the duke. Sienna explained to the emperor, "I can share my vision with Hisar, so my eyes can see evil spirits. It's a gift for the future." Faced with the duke's question, the emperor decided not to hide it anymore. "Kid, we don't have much time left," he suddenly said. "I'm about to die." This revelation startled the duke. The emperor kept asking, why? It turns out that not long ago the emperor suddenly fainted while handling his work. Despite his old age, his health had always been very good, so the fainting caused quite a commotion. The crown prince even told the emperor, "If your majesty doesn't have much time left, then please choose a successor." This surprised the emperor greatly, but after waking up there was nothing unusual about his body. Even the royal physician confirmed that his health was fine. The emperor thought everything would return to normal, but unexpectedly, he discovered something within himself. Besides the crown prince, the emperor didn't tell anyone about this discovery. The duke looked at the emperor with worry. The emperor seemed to enjoy joking a lot, even telling the duke to come to his funeral. The duke was speechless, and the two began to argue again. Sienna whispered, "Your Majesty, are you sick because of evil spirits?" The emperor remembered that Sienna was also there and gently responded, "Please keep this a secret. Don't let outsiders know." But Sienna replied, "You can disperse evil spirits." Hearing this, the emperor felt reassured, but he knew his condition was serious. Relying only on Sienna couldn't solve the problem. This was the first time Sienna had seen such a large amount of evil energy. If the evil energy broke out in a place where magic power gathers, it would give birth to countless monsters. That's why the Emperor chose to stay in his domain. He didn't want to harm others. The Emperor was very surprised that Sienna grasped the situation so accurately. She was right. Only here could the evil spirits be restrained. He turned and shouted at the Duke, "You keep praising this child for being smart and clever. Of course we have to use the word genius. What will others think if you let them underestimate this child?" The Duke was completely infuriated by the Emperor's words. He admitted that he had been too modest, and in the future he would definitely praise Sienna as a peerless genius. Hisar also chimed in. "Of course, we also need to see who chooses the owner." Only Sienna looked at them worriedly. At this moment, the Emperor bowed and asked Sienna to demonstrate the name of Hisar. Sienna took out Hisar's body, and the Emperor observed it carefully. "I've heard that Hisar has changed form. What is this? A very special design?" the Emperor said, growing more intrigued. The more he looked, the more strange it seemed. "Wait, isn't this a cigarette? Did you choose this yourself?" Sienna hastily explained, "No, it's not me. This is what Hisar likes." The Emperor rested assured, thinking that Sienna's aesthetic might just be a little skewed. He smiled at her. "I'm honored to meet Hisar and its owner. The name is a mysterious spirit. Its origin unclear, and it has become the most famous, perhaps also the strongest, master of Hisar." The Duke advised the Emperor to listen to Sienna. She and Hisar could definitely cure people's illnesses. But the Emperor hesitated for a moment. He couldn't give Sienna an exact answer because there was another child who also wanted to cure him, Lena, who had recently awakened as a healing magician.